Many of your roles here as epidemiologists and health administrators are to understand health problems in your community and to try to implement some level of policy or action to mitigate the factors that contribute to these health problems. In health, when you're close to the problem, you see people. There are several tragic individual and undesirable events that may or may not be directly related in some capacity, and some, or maybe all, are preventable at some level. And not only do you see people, but you see people react. Waves of community pressure produce a call to action, and something has to be done, and we're compelled to find a solution, but addressing the problem means more than quick fixes. It means dealing with the conditions that create the problems. Regarding the opioid epidemic, not all cities and counties are like Oakland County. It's difficult to get accurate and timely information in order to even begin to understand the nature of the problem. In a recent webinar that we did with GovLoop, 59% of the audience that we polled didn't have an accurate picture of what was happening. They didn't have overdoses or naloxone deployments or even mortalities in their communities. Here at Esri, we'll walk through a set of immediately deployable and interrelated configurations of ArcGIS to emphasize how we mitigate the opioid epidemic on the local level. My colleague Jared Shoultz and I, we both come from really disparate backgrounds. I spent a majority of my career in law enforcement, Jared with health analysis, and we're going to walk through how agencies like Oakland County and like others are collaborating and coordinating on solving some very serious problems using WebGIS.
Thanks, Phil. Esri has developed a solution offering that addresses the underlying needs expressed by our end users grappling with the opioid epidemic. A solution offering is a fully supported configuration of the ArcGIS platform that's been vetted by end users and designed to address a specific workflow or challenge they're facing. This particular solution has multiple deployment options ranging from a DIY approach to a full professional service implementation. And once it's implemented, the infrastructure, knowledge, and experience gained by organizations can be leveraged to help address any problem that emerges now or in the future. The components of this offering are listed on screen here, and they range, and they're addressing a lot of the things that Tricia had talked about, as well as a lot of the questions you all had. To educate the community, we have a package that allows you to take existing data from different sources, map it over to what's needed to kind of hydrate these solution templates, and aggregate it up to a level that you're comfortable with sharing. To actually monitor your the response to the opioid crisis internally, we've got a dashboard with different KPIs that we'll be showing where you can push that information in there on the opioid deaths and the overdoses at the point level that are being collected in the field or through different mechanisms. So how does WebGIS and these configured applications help multiple stakeholders, often in different departments and agencies who oftentimes don't work together, team up and address some of the biggest challenges facing society? Challenges ranging from natural man-made disasters to shootings to predictable recurring issues like heat waves and disease outbreaks. We're all here to understand how the ArcGIS platform can help us be more efficient and more effective in solving these problems. So let's kind of circle back around to the opioid epidemic and kind of put some of these solutions in context here. You've got public safety first responders that are out there in the field dealing with overdoses and deaths, and often administering reversal agents like naloxone to counteract the effects of these drugs. You've got public health professionals. We heard talk about MEs and coroners that are entering mortality reports and related toxicology reports, dealing with these complicated issues about multiple causes of tests and nosology coding and everything else. And then we've got other local and state government elected officials that are establishing and forming the coalitions that are needed to collaborate and access the resources that are needed to address this issue. All of these groups need different levels of data at different scales for different purposes to help address this epidemic. And to adequately address this epidemic, they need to promote education outreach. They need to promote treatment options and analyze where they're at, conduct prevention efforts, and kind of conduct an effective response that kind of ties all these different things together. Well, ArcGIS platform allows you to do this through a secure data sharing, collection, and collaboration platform. And the nice thing about it is a lot of these stakeholders are already leveraging pieces and parts of it today. So at the base, you can deploy ArcGIS online to address the collaborative workflows that you need to collect a lot of this data and share things through intuitive applications. Now, for a lot of our organizations that need more stricter security standards, we've heard talk of HIPAA, CGIS. These are standards that are really central to what we do as an organization in public health and human services. So by implementing ArcGIS Enterprise, we can absolutely accommodate the need to store data that must be protected behind a firewall and then aggregate it up to be shared with different entities. Well, so now to kind of bring this home, Phil and I are going to walk through and demonstrate some of the specific components of this solution offering.
So to organize this, we're going to talk of this in simple terms. Basically, to work through this problem, we're going to collect, understand, and act. So to begin, I'm going to walk through an application called Survey 123 that you can use to be able to empower your first responders to collect information in the field. So here's an application on my mobile device, and this is what I use every day as a first responder in order to be able to work through either emails or things that I may be working with. There's all kinds of capabilities that we're aware of with these mobile devices now, and one of the main ones here is that this is something that's personal to me. I have a GPS in there, and I can actually start to interact with it in different ways. This form is something that I live with on a consistent basis for being able to enter information in. And to make things easier, I can also use some capabilities that are inherently in the application itself. So I can enter in information very quickly using voice-to-text recognition. So to begin, I'm going to start with entering in the full address. 380 New York Street Auditorium. Redlands. Incident number is 11753. Able to identify the call date that is happening here based off of the system information that I have here. Can enter in the age, 47. Male. I'm marking other information here about the race, the drug that's being used, and I can enter in comments here as a synopsis. Male 47 found unresponsive, baggy with brown powder, marked with blue elephant stamp. This is one of those ways that law enforcement is starting to begin to track to identify the sources of heroin and other opiates as a form of branding in order to be able to identify really kind of collective market forces and gang activity. So this is a typically pretty form-based method for being able to work with it. And now what I can do is get a little closer towards understanding directly where we are based off of the GPS, and also a detailed base map here, especially helpful for some of those pretty dense apartment complexes as well. So once I mark this information, I'm able to mark the checkbox and send this up if I have a connection, and I can also save this for, say, another time if I need to be able to connect back at the station or somewhere else here at this point. So that's Survey 123. It's a pretty easy thing to be able to operate in the field. So what I want to show you is Survey 123 Connect. So at the basis of Survey 123 is using Excel to be able to develop the format for what we're seeing here. And this is just the view of that survey, the same thing that we were seeing there through the iPhone itself. But all of the information that we're collecting, what's in the survey, what's the type of data, what's the field type, the name, all of this information is something that is easily editable by anybody who knows how to work with Excel. We can update the information in Excel, push it through to our first responders who are able to connect to that form, and now collect additional information based off of what more we may need. I can change the choices in those drop downs and really make it very easy to be able to collect the type of information that I need. This collection process really works well for overdoses. I think it can help to mark additional information about some of the mortality events that we're seeing in the field, and also naloxone deployment. So when we're talking about being able to collect and understand the effectiveness of our treatment options, this mobile application makes it really very easy for us to be able to produce a strategy that's agile and that's quick to change in order to be able to really get the data that we need to do what we need to be able to do. So that's kind of a view of what collection looks like. What I want to shift towards is more about understanding, which is actually another component of Survey 123 as well. So inherent in Survey 123 is an analysis view. This, once you publish your information, and now you've got your first responders collecting this information in this field, this is something that's built in a reporting mechanism that you can understand the distribution of the data that you're collecting. What's my age range? What's the gender that we're seeing as far as these overdoses? What's the distribution of race? The drug that's being used, and other comment information as well too, and I can go into depth about this as well too. I can also query for date ranges in order to be able to understand if there's change over time, and I can also make some useful reports on this by being able to print a current view of this information to be able to do at-a-glance reporting, say on a weekly basis for some of our key performance indicators for how we're actually responding to these overdoses. Now, this is all information that is usually kept relatively inside the organization, and you wouldn't necessarily want to be able to share address level information with the public or say with other stakeholders. But a big part about understanding is actually collaborating on this data, aggregating and anonymizing this data with some easy to use tools to be able to accomplish that for regular reporting mechanisms. As a part of this solution offering and all of this set of solutions that we've made to really make this easy to approach this problem, we are also sharing a configuration of ArcGIS Pro, which have task-based workflows that you can use to import existing data as a spreadsheet, to geocode that opioid incident data if it's overdoses or deaths or naloxone deployments. And also in this case, what I want to walk through and show you is how you can actually aggregate and ultimately anonymize some of this data as well. So a big portion of this workflow here, this task, is, and it'll walk you through step by step and explain the pieces that we're trying to work with here. What we want to be able to do is to take these overdoses, these red dots, and to aggregate them within our municipal boundaries here. And here I want to select the type of report that I'm making. So I am selecting those overdoses, and the selection that I want to be able to make with a SQL expression is to understand what are the overdoses that are occurring with the age equal than or under, or less than or equal to, 25. Not everybody knows how to run this routine themselves, so this is one of those that makes it easy to be able to first understand that we're selecting this information, and now we're working through the next step of aggregating this here to our municipal county boundaries. I want to save this as overdoses under 25. This can be for a time period. I can aggregate other statistics here at this point, and I can ultimately run an additional routine here that summarizes that data within these boundaries, ultimately creating a new feature that I can then use for sharing with my stakeholders or ultimately sharing with the public here as well too. So we're writing this feature, and now we've got this new polygon layer that we're working with. And what I want to do at this point now is to change my symbology and to use graduated colors in order to be able to really count and mark what our picture looks like here. So we can see that we have some densities here, some greater level of details within this choropleth map of the overdoses that are under the age of 25. Another quick thing that I wanted to show you about this is the ability to actually start to understand some of this information with some quick infographics as well too. If you haven't seen this, this is a pretty great way in which to be able to sum up within those municipal boundaries actually what we're seeing in terms of demographics and additional contextual information. So here I can see an age pyramid. I can see our tapestry segments, what we're seeing as far as like how would you characterize this area. The households by income start to gain a greater picture here. This is a little bit more of an affluent area. The race and ethnicity of this area, average household size, looks like we've got a larger number of kids, especially compared to the rest of Montgomery County. And This is an additional statistic that I added into this infographics report. This is the index of those that have used prescription drugs for backaches and back pain. We're beginning to start to understand what this picture is here at this point. And once we do this, it really gives a chance for the rest of our stakeholders to start to also begin to collectively understand greater what this problem is.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, so understanding, I mean, we saw a story map that was produced to kind of, walk through Tricia's presentation and educate the public, and we'll see a little bit more of that. But another part of understanding is promoting this shared knowledge of how you're progressing on a particular issue among the different stakeholders that are involved. This is a dashboard called the Opioid Response Dashboard that's part of this offering. And what it allows you to do is roll all of that information up, whether it be at the aggregate form or at the point level form, depends on who you're sharing this information with, across your kind of your collaborative group and your stakeholder community here. You can see I've got a version of that aggregate level data like Phil just generated with that desktop or that pro project of total number of overdoses, but I can also have the individual overdoses, the deaths, any of the other information that's available here, seizures, naloxone deployments, so on and so forth. And I can kind of put it in this framework for understanding based on these key performance indicators. Here I'm looking at overdoses for the last 90 days from today and the previous 90 days before that, so I can start getting a quick idea of what's going on with the trends. I can kind of drill into this data here if I have rights to it and go down to kind of the point level here, maybe turn off some of this aggregate level data and kind of explore the cityscape here and see what's going on in that community, what's around that area. So I can really kind of get some more contextual information, that really helps me figure out, what's happening in these particular areas. Is this by a park? Is this by a school? What's kind of going on? And using that same type of design, we walk through and display the other information, the mortalities, the individual information on the mortalities of the last 90 days, the previous 90 days. Are we doing better? Somebody had asked about, measuring program effectiveness. This is a good way to start to scratch the surface on that. Looking at your naloxone deployments and where they're occurring across the community and kind of using this information not only in this type of dashboard to help make decisions on, lobbying for additional resources and placing new kind of locations. And then we've got, drug seizure information coming from law enforcement agencies here. As well as information that's being crowdsourced from the community. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but now we can see what's getting reported in, how quickly we're following up on it. So let's go ahead and turn it back over to Phil, and we'll talk a little bit more about how to act on this information.
Yeah, so with greater understanding, now we move on to action. And for action, I think what we're seeing both with the literature, what Tricia was showing us before, is that we have some pretty common themes of action. We're educating the public. We're providing treatment options. We're preventing drugs from getting into the hands of people that may be continuing or just starting an addiction. And then we're ultimately responding in the right kind of way with a coordinated effort by law enforcement and health. So to begin to start to understand how we act, I'm going to show you our education effort. So we have a configuration of a story map here that we use as a baseline for cities and counties to begin to bring their information together into one place that they can actually share to the public and start to contextualize what this problem looks like for them. Again, and just as a reminder, most cities and counties don't even really have a picture of what's happening in terms of the number of deaths and overdoses that they're seeing. And so to be able to have this really brought all collectively to the table here to understand this and to share what this picture looks like with the community helps to form a partnership with them as well too. We can understand the emotional impact. We can understand and share what the information is as far as the opioid mortality. This is what we'd seen before, both with what we had shared through that pro package. We can share information about deaths under 25 and over 25, these mortality events. We can see these opioid overdoses and understand what may be a distribution between male and female opioid overdoses. And we can really tailor this specific to whatever the story is for the city and the county that you're working with. These are editable narratives. It's a baseline to begin with. It's something that we use to say, this is something that you can use to get started with and help to reduce the amount of time that it takes to be able to do this. When with our own response in naloxone deployments, we can share a swipe map that gives an idea about 2 90-day increments. What does this picture look like as it's changing over time? You can report treatment options and locations and be able to share information about that, and also pain management alternatives as well too. Jared's going to show you actually how to bring some of this data together.
One of the questions that came in was, the ability to, look at these different resources that are available in the community. And one of the things that Tricia had mentioned was, these static lists that are on websites sometimes of the resource locations and everything else. And it's often easy to gather information. It's much harder to keep that information current. And resource locators are a good way to provide this information out to the community. Oftentimes it's not a lack of resources, but it's a lack of awareness of those resources. And maybe bottlenecks on getting web pages updated and websites updated and other information modified, it kind of puts some artificial delay in keeping information current. Well, a lot of these things that we're showing you here, everything that we're showing you is completely configurable. There's no code that has been written to do a lot of these things, whether it was configuring that Excel spreadsheet for Survey 123, a story map, or these other applications. This is the health resource inventory, and it's an ability through a browser to maintain the locations of alternative medicine options, whether they be massage, therapy, yoga, your drug drop-off locations, treatment locations, different health and human services resources, and that's just the ones that we're talking about related to the opioid epidemic. You can use the same infrastructure and tool to maintain any type of service location that you have across the community. And it's very easy. It's done through a browser. You set the rights to it, but say that you want to drop a new drug treatment facility in here. Just simply go in, drop that on a map, and then add all of the attributes that you need. What type of payment, what type of services they're offering. Even if you want to link this behind the scenes to systems looking at current capacities and availability of beds. It's all possible in this type of environment that makes it easier to maintain and update and keep current. And then once you get that information entered in there, then you make it available to people in the community. This is a responsive application. It means it's configured. It works on your smartphone. It works on your tablet. It works when you're at home. It works when you're in the office. If you're out in the actual community with your device, and you go here, it's instantly going to capture your location and show you what's the closest facility to you. You can configure and modify it all sorts of different ways. I want to look at the closest drug treatment facility, get information, get directed out to their website, even get driving directions to it in a very easy to use manner. That same infrastructure and tool for alternative pain management locations. Easy to inventory, maintain, and access that information, as well as the closest drug drop-off locations, so that people can find that. And we're just looking at drug drop-off right here, but you saw Tricia showing the little deactivator bags and everything else. It's all configurable. It can be whatever it is that you need it to be, whatever attributes that are needed to be added. And not only do you have that interface to capture the locations, you can use it as a systematic way to, say, report on what's going on. So you can track the information on how much is being collected over whatever user-defined time frame that you want for reporting, and see these nice charts over time, showing you what's going on. And again, once you have this information hydrated in this platform, then all of a sudden now you can look at optimal ways to locate new facilities, and maybe close existing ones, open up new ones, expand services, whatever the case may be. We'll go over and turn it over to Phil.
One of the additional pieces that we share in that story map that I was talking about before is actually the drug activity reporter, and we're talking about response here at this point. Everybody's found needles on a playground, or has had somebody that has had their medicine cabinet raided that they know of, or there's usually a lot of different ways in which the public has information that is useful, very useful to understanding this problem, and really something needs to be done in terms of response here at this point. So using this form, it's an easy way for the public to be able to enter information that they may be observing, some details about it, even photo and location itself here as well too. So if we're happening to see needles on a playground, well then this then is something, it gives you a one-stop location that you can share this information back to the agencies if it's police or if it's public works that needs to be able to do something about it. And the doing something about it is actually something that's covered on the other end here through a drug activity manager. So this is a configuration of Crowdsource Manager. It's an application that, again, is something that you don't need to program, but it gives you the chance to be able to enter or to review the information that's being entered by the public, to be able to provide some kind of status as far as activity here at this point. So I see this drug paraphernalia, the drug observed is heroin, and then there's needle found in the park by the slide. And for the public here, this is somebody who says, again, something that they'd seen here before. So this is an observation that we can see. We can also, if they're collecting, see additional contact information. But then the action that we want to be able to take at this point is then to not only review that this is something that's been submitted, now it's something that is in progress, and I want to be able to assign this to the major crimes unit to be able to determine this is a problem that's occurring on a regular basis, and I want to provide some guidance then for the rest of law enforcement and potentially public works to keep an eye on the area, to regularly resort to an action that can be used to mitigate this problem that we're seeing specific to this geography.
All right. So as I hope Tricia and Phil and I have demonstrated, the current opioid problem is complex, and like most problems, it can't be solved in a vacuum. An organizational approach and a shared vision is required to enable both internal and external data sharing and collaboration. Let's circle back around to the opioid epidemic and kind of put these solutions in context here. So each one of these agencies listed here have a different role in data collection activities. And by leveraging these tools, that data can be shared, collected and shared in real time to make it actionable, to make real data-driven decisions to drive the different activities at the point level and aggregate scale that are occurring in these different organizations. That information can be rolled up in a unified view and shared out at the appropriate level with whatever central authorities kind of coordinating these activities. Whether it be a task force that are interpreting these KPIs, informing elected officials and stakeholders, and doing the all-important work of advocating for different grant funding and different resources that are required to address this, as well as communicating that information out to the public. So where do you get this information? This is, I'll go ahead here and just click on this to just go. So on our solutions website, we have over 500 different solutions out there across different types of industries. It's solutions.arcgis.com. And you can look through here and browse by different things. Let's look at local government. And you can see a breakdown in there. I'm going to go over to where you can find these opioid epidemic solution templates. You can't get them in law enforcement, but since this is the Health and Human Services Conference, let's go ahead and look there. And you can see a set of solutions templates that are available. Tackling the opioid epidemic is the one that we looked at. You can quickly go in and take these things for a test drive. Deploy the solutions with a deployment tool that allows you with a few clicks of a button to get this deployed up in your organization, as well as other solutions here around reducing homelessness and combating vector-borne disease. And these are just the ones listed here. There's a lot of other ones that are very much applicable to Health and Human Services organizations. So, addressing the next big problem. Opioid is the issue that we're talking about right now, but there's a lot of other issues out there that we're all facing in our daily work, for whether it's public health or private health care that, as we saw some of the Kaiser stuff that we were talking about earlier. These solutions are extensible. This particular one is around opioid, but the infrastructure, the knowledge and the experience gained implementing these solutions are currently being used by a number of our users across the world to address things like conducting their homeless point-in-time counts, looking at population change and how it's impacting the services that they're offered. Looking at social and cultural determinants of health that were mentioned earlier, like poverty, healthy access to food, and looking at accessibility. And not just accessibility from a get in your car, go somewhere standpoint, but multimodal accessibility across urban landscapes with metros, bike, and walking, in preparing for disasters and response activities, and modeling different types of events, outbreaks of disease. Like you saw Linda mention earlier with insights. Exploring information, teasing patterns and discerning things out of there in order to make informed decisions moving forward and addressing some of the challenges that I know that we're all facing. Well, I think with that, we'll go ahead and open the floor up to any questions you might have.